Greetings. Well, I thought I would do my Sunday song and rumination talk here in the greenhouse that Ian just built. It's actually not that warm outside. It was -8 last night, and we were able to keep this at a really nice temperature in here. -8 meaning below freezing. And right now it's only, I think, about 5 degrees outside, whatever that is in your language. And it's very warm in here. It's 30 degrees in here, and so I get to pretend it's summer up here in Canada. But I wanted to do it in here because I'm going to be talking about food today. But before I start, I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm on, which is Treaty 2 territory, and to say that the Anishinaabe people have been here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and that there was an attempt at robbing the wisdom and assimilating into a system that I believe is decidedly not as wise. And it was an attempt, and I don't think that it was successful completely. So I wanted to acknowledge this land. And then I also want to say that before I really start talking about food, I want to acknowledge that when people who are gung-ho about food like myself and growing are, they can tend to sound fundamentalist and also preachy and judgmental. And James Finley always says that, it's true that every prophet is a pain in the neck, but not every pain in the neck is a prophet. And so I want to really carry that teaching in my heart as I go forward to talk about what I'm going to talk about, because it still needs to be said, but it can be said in a way that's loving, or it can be said in a way that's self-righteous. And so I really don't want the self-righteous piece to be here, even though I can sense in myself the justice that rises up in me is definitely there. So one of the reasons why a number of years ago I wanted to begin farming is because I knew it takes time to build when you're limited in your funding resources, and it takes time to build your dream and to educate yourself. And so we've started and just slowly but surely added elements to what we think of as an ecosystem here on our farm. And I wanted to talk a little bit just to people who feel like that's so daunting, or who feel like their living situation does not allow for that. So again, I mentioned last week the people living in a condo or an apartment in the city. Right now with the coronavirus, the loneliness that sets in, and just the lack of access to natural space, and the lack of encountering. So I said, if you have a plant, or if you don't have one, go get one and encounter it. Pray with it. Get a cat, get a dog, whatever, just start encountering something that's alive, someone that's alive, because we want to, this is about the story that we're going to be telling in the present moment that's sending a message to the future. And so the story that we're telling in the present moment this week that I wanted to mention is particularly about food. So I want to encourage you, if you have a window that's got a patch of sun, and you can open the window and let the air blow in, to plant a seed that will grow a plant that will bear fruit. I'm particularly speaking to people here in this particular hemisphere because it's springtime, and I am feeling an urgency to speak to this right now, because we have a window of opportunity to tell this story at this moment in time. And I know that seed sales are up, which is great, but I just wanted to speak even more deeply into this. If you have money and you know of a family in your area that would like to start growing but don't have the funds, I highly recommend you seek out that family and you say, look, I'd love to help you get started with how you want to grow things, turn your lawn into a garden, get fruit trees, whatever it is, that you would support them with the supplies, and then they could maybe give you some of the yield. And I think right now, the more we can consider how we remove ourselves from the typical supply chain that we're accustomed to right now, the better, because we're in a situation where, for instance, Africa is just entering into the lockdown mode, and some countries have experienced locust infestations, and so the food supply system there is already feeling super vulnerable. And so I just wanted to mention that I have this dream, and I know other people have this dream, that we could create locally resilient systems all around the world if we so decided, and we would raise up our efforts by a bit. Charles Eisenstein says in Climate, a New Story, as well as Sacred Economics, I think, in a number of his talks, that we would have to put our physical labor efforts up by 10% around the world in order to farm regeneratively, meaning that the systems that are in place are not extractive in the way that we farm, and also support local resiliency. And the systems actually create resilient ecosystems that become resilient to wildfires and floods and all the rest. So I know that's a total dreamy dream, but I think that if there was ever a time to be dreaming about a world like that, it's now. And so how do we do that? Well, we start with a seed. And so that was the talk I wanted to give today on food, is plant a seed this year, and plant it as a prayer for the future. Plant it for all the children around the world. And I also want to mention that it really hit home to me when I saw that John Dominic Crossan's work on Jesus moved to Capernaum, and how he befriended fisher people around that coastline, and really John Dominic Crossan, and I see it as well as a food activism movement, because there was a corporate fishery that had overtaken the Sea of Galilee. And what are these food miracles all about with Jesus? We often overlook them. We look at his healing miracles, I think, a little bit more than the food miracles. But both are at play here. And I really just wanted to say, plant a seed as a prayer. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much, from my hermitage to yours.